Let me tell you something. There are nights in a woman's life she remembers clear as sunrise, no matter how many decades pass. And that night at Tor's restaurant, the night Ving Diesel himself walked in and changed my life as one I still feel in my bones. Back then, I was just Miss Loretta Mae Carter, a 52-year-old black woman trying to make ends meet by waitressing part-time at this fancy Los Angeles restaurant. Folks love to talk about Tor's like it was heaven dipped in butter, lighting low and golden. Jazz humming soft through the air, plates of steak coming out smelling like they were kissed by angels. But behind the kitchen doors, behind the smiles, chilly. It wasn't heaven. It was survival. Asterisk, I share new life stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I assure you'll love it. If you keep listening till the NC Tours had this manager at Callaway Atoll, thin man with cold blue eyes and a voice that could slice a person right down the middle. He didn't like me much. I wasn't young, I wasn't quiet, and I wasn't somebody he could push into corners. He especially hated that customers asked for me by name. Said my presence was distracting. What he meant was he didn't know how to control me. That night, came into work tired already, feet swollen, back tight, but I put on my best smile. A group of girls from the college down the street kept me laughing. One older couple said I reminded them of their daughter, and two businessmen tipped me heavy. But every time I passed Rick, he gave me that look. The one that said, "Don't get comfortable." Around 8 p.m., I was in the back wiping down trays when he cornered me. "Loretta," he said, voice low, "after hours, you're staying late. We need to discuss your performance." I knew what that meant. I'd seen him keep younger women behind late, forcing them into his office. Folks whispered, but nobody said a thing out loud. Jobs were too precious. Rent too high. Fear too heavy. I swallowed my pride and said, "Rick, I worked a long shift already. I ain't staying after hours." He leaned in close enough that I smelled his mint gum. "You stay," he hissed, "or you're done here." My hands trembled. My breath caught. At my age, losing a job ain't just an inconvenience, it's the ground falling out beneath you. And suddenly, all the strength I'd held on to felt like it was slipping through my fingers. So I walked to the break room, shut the door, and cried. Quiet, controlled. Like a woman who don't want nobody knowing she's breaking. One of the younger servers, a sweet boy named Tyler, came in behind me. "Miss Loretta, you okay?" He whispered, double quotes, "No, baby," I said, wiping tears. "I ain't okay at all." What I didn't know then, what I couldn't know, was that Vin Diesel himself had walked into that restaurant that very moment. Not with cameras, not with a crowd. Just jeans, a hoodie, and a quiet look in his eyes like he knew pain when he saw it. And he heard me crying. He sat at the bar pretending to sip water. But I could feel him listening through the thin walls. He was waiting, watching, reading the room like someone who'd been broke, tired and stepped on before, and when I stepped back out to the floor, trying to breathe normal again, Tyler whispered, "That man at the bar? He's been asking if you're okay." I looked at him, confused. "What man?" Tyler nodded toward the bar, and baby, when I saw Vin Diesel sitting there, looking at me with concern in his eyes like he knew my story already. I knew something powerful was about to shift in my life. Because predators feel big, till a bigger force walks in and stands beside you. Asterisk, I remember wiping my cheeks, straightening my apron, trying to pretend everything was normal before walking toward the front of the restaurant. But Lord, nothing was normal. Vin Diesel, the movie star, the action hero folks faint over, was sitting right there like he belonged in that place. Except he didn't sit like a celebrity. He didn't act like one either. He sat like a man who understood silence. Like someone who'd had to swallow hurt too many times in his life. When I came near him, he didn't stare too long. Didn't make me feel like a spectacle. He just nodded and said, "Ma'am, you good?" His voice was gentle, but firm enough to lean on. I wanted to lie. Lord knows I tried. "Yes, sir. Just allergies." I said. He raised one eyebrow, just one, and Somehow that look told me he didn't believe a word. I walked away quick, trying to avoid Rick's glare from across the room. But Vin didn't let it go. A few minutes later, he approached the server station where Tyler was stacking plates. "Is she okay?" Vin asked. Tyler froze. I swear that boy's hands were shaking. Rick had put so much fear from years of controlling folks that even speaking truth felt like a dangerous act. Tyler whispered, "No, she ain't okay." And Vin's whole face changed. It wasn't anger. It was decision. Meanwhile, I was on the floor taking orders from a married couple celebrating their anniversary. I kept smiling, kept serving like nothing was wrong. But deep down, I felt like a woman standing on crumbling ground. Then Rick came toward me again. "Loretta," he said sharp, "meet me in my office at closing." His tone left no room for discussion. My breath snagged in my throat. I felt the whole room shift. Something inside me just broke. Little did I know, Vin had seen everything: Rick's posture, his tone, the way I shrank, and that's when Vin stood up. He walked right to my table and said, loud enough for Rick to hear, "Ma'am, I need to talk to you privately." The woman at the table looked annoyed. "We're ordering dessert." Vin didn't even blink. "It's important." I stepped aside with him. My voice shook. "Sir, please don't cause trouble." He leaned in. "I know something's happening. You don't have to tell me. But I'm here now." My throat closed up. Nobody had said "I'm here" to me in a long time. That's when Rick stormed over. "Is there a problem?" he asked, smiling tight, fake as a $3 bill. Vin didn't look his way at first. He looked at me. "You're safe," he said. "And baby." Those two words carried more strength than anything I'd felt all year. Rick snapped. "She has work to do. No time for personal conversations." Vin finally turned to him. "No," he said. "This conversation happens now." Rick choked out a laugh. "And who exactly are you to demand anything in my restaurant?" Vin reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, opened it, and honey, when I tell Uric soul, left, his body, because right there, glistening under the light, was Vin Diesel's ownership ID for the Tours restaurant chain. "My name is Vin Diesel," he said calmly, "and this conversation is long overdue." Rick stumbled. "Sui, I didn't know." "No," Vin interrupted, voice cold as steel. "You didn't care." The restaurant froze around us. I felt my whole world shift from fear to the first spark of hope I'd had in ages. Asterisk. Now, baby, I ain't never been the type to enjoy watching a man squirm. But when Rick Calloway realized the very person he'd been tormenting me in front of actually owned the whole restaurant chain, Hugh, the Lord knows I tried not to smile. But I did. "A little," Rick stammered. "Mr. Diesel Suze, I didn't expect Vin. Didn't wait for him to finish." "Office," he said firmly. Now, and Rick, who'd spent months barking at us like he owned the air we breathed, suddenly looked like a boy caught stealing from his mama's purse. He turned and walked fast toward his office. Then followed behind him. But before stepping into that room, Ben turned back at me. "Miss Loretta," he said, voice soft, "you stay right here. I'll handle this." Nobody had ever defended me like that before. Not a boss. Not a coworker. Certainly not a stranger. Yet here was a man I'd only seen through movie screens, speaking to me like my safety mattered. The office door closed behind them. The restaurant fell silent around me. Servers whispered. Customers pretended not to stare. Tyler and Nate stood behind the bar watching the office like it was the gates of heaven about to open. I stood there, hands shaking, apron crumpled, heart thumping like old gospel drums. And for the first time in a long time, the fear wasn't choking me. It was fading inside that office. Chilly, I couldn't hear much, just muffled voices. But Vin's tone was deep, steady, controlled. Rick's voice, high-pitched, nervous. The kind of voice a guilty man gets when the truth has finally come home to visit. Later, Vin told me exactly what happened in that office, how Rick tried to lie, tried to spin stories, tried to pretend every complaint was misinterpreted. But Vin wasn't the type to play games, especially not with people's dignity. See? What Rick didn't know was that Ving had already overheard part of my conversation in the break room. And baby, that man has ears sharp as razors when something don't sit right. So Ven told him straight, "You abused your position. You intimidated a woman who depended on this job. And you don't get to do that under my name." And then this part still makes my knees weak. Ven pulled out his phone, hit a button, and played the recording he'd captured earlier from the hallway. My voice, Rick's threats. Tyler's worry got cold, clear proof. Rick's face must have gone whiter than flour because Vin walked out alone. Rick stayed inside, silent, like he'd melted into the chair. When Ven reappeared on the floor, the whole staff stiffened. He looked right at me. "He's gone," he said quietly. "You're safe now." I don't know how to describe that moment. Relief hit me so fast my knees nearly gave out. Tyler rushed over and steadied my arm. Nate exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. But baby, I didn't cry. Not then. Not when everyone was watching. Instead, I lifted my chin, wiped the last bit of fear off my face, and said, "Thank you, Mr. Diesel." He shook his head. "No thank you, Miss Loretta. You held your own long before I walked in. And Lord, that meant more to me than he could ever know." Then he turned to the whole staff and raised his voice just enough. "None of you will ever deal with a manager like Calloway again. There will be changes here, changes that protect you, not trap you." The room went quiet, not afraid, quiet. Hope quiet. Emily, the little college girl who'd been scared for so long, started crying softly. Tyler put an arm around her. Nate looked like he wanted to cheer, but didn't know if it was allowed. Me. I finally breathed. A long, steady breath I hadn't taken in over a year. Then glanced at me again and said, "Miss Loretta, after work, I want to talk to you personally. You deserve that." And baby, I didn't know it yet, but that talk was about to change more than just my job. It was about to change my whole direction. Asterisk when the restaurant finally closed that night. The air felt different, lighter, like somebody had cracked open a window in a house that had been suffocate for too long. The employees trickled out in small groups, Emily with her head finally lifted, Tyler whispering excitedly to Nate, the cooks peeking out from the kitchen like children who'd heard thunder but now saw sunshine. Everybody felt the shift. But me. I was still gripping the edge of a table, trying to quiet the storm of emotions running through me. Vin walked over gently, not rushing, not talking loud, just moving with the calm of a man who knew trauma didn't dissolve the second the threat was gone. "Miss Loretta," said, voice warm, "you ready?" I nodded, even though my heart was thumping like church drums on a Sunday morning. We stepped outside into the cool Los Angeles night. The streetlights made everything glow soft, like the world had gone quiet just for us. Vin leaned against the brick wall, arms crossed loosely. Not intimidating, just present. "What he did to you? That's not something you carry alone." I didn't expect that. Not from a movie star. Not from a man folks imagine is nothing but muscle and engines. My voice cracked. "It wasn't just today, Ving. He's been on me for months. Threatened me, demeaning me, treating me like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air as everybody else." He nodded slowly. "I figured as much. And it wasn't just me," I added, breath shaking. "He did it to Emily too. The little college girl. You saw how she flinched." Vin closed his eyes like the truth pained him. "I saw it the second I walked in." My hands started trembling then. Not out of fear, out of release. "When you're a black woman my age," I whispered, "people think you strong enough to swallow anything. They don't see when your knees give out. They don't hear when you cry in the bathroom stall. They don't care when you're scared." And Lord, saying it out loud tore something open inside me. Then didn't interrupt. Didn't look away. He let every word land. Then he spoke, quiet but powerful. "Miss Loretta, strong doesn't mean silent. And surviving isn't the same as living." Those words, they cut me right through. Not in a painful win, a freeing way, I wiped my face and said, "Why'd you step in? You could have walked away. You could have ignored me like everybody else." He let out a breath, staring up at the night sky. I grew up watching good people get pushed around. People who didn't deserve it. People who were overlooked, ignored, disrespected. I promised myself a long time ago that if I ever had the power to protect someone, I would. He looked at me then. Really looked. With you. It wasn't even a question. My eyes filled again, but this time the tears weren't made of fear. They were made of gratitude, relief, recognition. He wasn't saving me because I was weak. He was standing with me because I was worthy. "What happens now?" I whispered. Ven straightened, his tone shifting into leadership. "Now I fix what should have never been broken. The store's going under review. New management. New rules. And I want you at the center of it." My brows shot up. "Me, yes, ma'am," he said with a gentle smile. "You've been carrying this place on your back without any authority. I want to change that." My breath caught. "I'm just a waitress." He shook his head slowly. "No, Miss Loretta. You're the backbone. And people like you deserve seats at tables, not just trays in their hands." I had to turn away then because the tears came fast and heavy. No one in my entire life had ever spoken of me like that. Not my old bosses. Not old relationships. Not the world, but here was Vin Diesel, seeing me clearer than I'd seen myself in years. When I finally found my voice, it was small. "What do you need from me?" He smiled, warm and steady. "Your honesty, your heart, and your voice." I exhaled shakily. "Well, I guess you got all three." He nodded once. "Good, because this ain't just about tonight. It's about changing every night to come. And baby." That's when I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my rise. The next morning, baby, I woke up with puffy eyes and a sore throat from all that crying, but also with a strange feeling in my chest, like hope had finally slipped its little fingers inside and taken root. It had been years since hope felt at home in me. When I arrived at the restaurant, every employee was gathered in the dining area, whispering like it was Christmas morning and they'd just opened gifts. Emily waved at me timidly. Tyler hugged me like I was his auntie. Nate handed me a cup of tea and said, "You deserve this." And they're standing by the hostess podium. Was Vin Diesel in the same hoodie from last night, hands in pockets, looking both relaxed and ready to change the world. "Morning, Miss Loretta," he said, smiling like he'd known me for decades. Chilly. I nearly melted, but I stayed strong. A woman can't lose composure in front of a movie star twice in 24 hours. I took a breath and stood tall. "What's happening?" I asked. Vin gestured for everyone to gather closer. His voice carried that soft authority that made the whole room settle. "First things first," he said. "Rick won't be returning. Corporate has been notified. HR has his file and a full investigation is underway." The workers let out breaths they'd been holding for months. Emily covered her mouth, tears falling silently. Tyler squeezed her shoulder. Even the cooks peered out, eyes wide. Vin continued, "I'm not here to sweep anything under the rug. What happened here is unacceptable, and it ends now." Lord, when I tell you grown men nodded like thankful children, it was something to witness. Then he turned his gaze to me, and to make sure this place never falls into the wrong hands again, he said, "I'll be restructuring things. We need voices from the floor people who understand the heart of this restaurant." I blinked, confused. Then he said the words that made my whole soul sit upright. "Miss Loretta, I want you to take on a leadership role here." I swear the world stopped turning for a moment. My hands trembled. "Me, Vin, I ain't never managed nobody." He smiled gently. "You've managed hearts. You've kept this place alive. And you've done it while surviving abuse from someone who should have protected you. That's leadership." I swallowed hard, tears threatening again. "But I'm older. Folks don't see women like me as he cut me off with a raised hand." "Exactly. And that's why we're changing the way things work. Strength don't expire with age." Emily stepped forward suddenly. Miss Loretta, you're the only one who cared about me here. Tyler added softly, you held us together. Nate nodded. You're the soul of this place. Their voices wrapped around me like a shawl woven from love and truth. I looked at Vin, searching his face for any sign of pity, but I found none. Only respect. What would I even be doing? I asked shakily. Employee advocate and guest experience coordinator, he said. You'll be the voice between staff and management. Your job is to make sure no one ever is mistreated again. And you'll help shape training, hospitality practices, and employee support systems across all our locations. My knees nearly buckled. You trust me with all that? Yes, ma'am, he said. You've already been doing it. Now you'll be paid and respected for it. The staff clapped loud and full of love. I covered my face and sobbed, but this time they were joyful tears. Healing tears. Tears that washed away years of pain. After the applause faded, Vin stepped closer and lowered his voice so only I could hear. You didn't deserve any of what happened, he said. And I'm sorry it took someone like me walking in for it to stop. But I won't let it happen again. Not to anyone. I shook my head, wiping tears. Vin, you didn't save me. You reminded me I was worth saving. He smiled, eyes soft. That's all I hope to do. I took a breath, stood straighter than I had in years, and said, well then, Mr. Diesel, let's fix this place. He grinned. Together. And baby, for the first time in my life, I felt powerful * life. Got a funny way of changing when you finally stand in the truth of who you are. A month after Vin Diesel walked into that restaurant and turned my whole world upright. Tours didn't look anything like the place I had cried in. The fear was gone. The shame was gone. The silence was gone. And honey, so was the way people looked at me. I wasn't Miss Loretta the waitress, no more. I was Miss Loretta May Carter, the woman who helped rewrite the entire restaurant's culture. Vin came by often during that first month. Not as the superstar folks scream over, but as a leader making sure his people were safe. He'd pull up in his simple hoodie, sit beside the cooks on break, talk to Emily about her college classes, ask Tyler about his music, check on Nate's family. And every single time he'd find me and ask, how are we doing today, Miss Loretta? Anything I need to fix? One afternoon, I told him the truth. Vin, I feel like I'm finally breathing. He smiled. Good. That's what a workplace should feel like. And Lord, that man wasn't lying. We created a new employee hotline. We built an anonymous reporting system. We held monthly emotional wellness check-ins. We taught managers how to lead with empathy instead of ego. And every policy started with the same line. Inspired by the experience and resilience of Miss Loretta May Carter, me, a black woman in her 50s, a woman most folks overlooked, a woman Rick thought he could break, but baby, I didn't break. I evolved. The day corporate finalized my title, they gathered everybody. The district director came, HR came, even the head chef from the Beverly Hills location showed up. Vin stood at the front, looking right at me. This is long overdue, he said. Miss Loretta, you have been the heart of this restaurant for a long time. Today, we make it official. He handed me a name badge, gold, polished, shining like a sunrise. Loretta M. Carter, head of employee advocacy and hospitality culture. I held that badge in both hands. Because truth be told, I didn't trust my fingers not to tremble. I looked at Vin. Why me? His answer was simple. Because you survived something dark and still chose to bring light. And baby, those words went straight into the part of my soul that had been aching for years. That night, I stayed after closing like I used to, but this time, not because someone threatened me. This time, because I wanted to. I walked through each aisle, touching chairs, smelling fresh polish on tables. Hearing laughter echoing from the staff room. Emily hugged me from behind. Miss Loretta, you saved me, she whispered. I shook my head. No, baby. We saved each other. Tyler walked over next, offering a fist bump. "You're the bravest person I know," Nate added. "We follow you because we trust you." I blinked through tears. Y'all gone make me cry again? And suddenly, I realized something. This restaurant wasn't just a place I worked at anymore. It was a place I had helped reshape. A place where people healed. A place where I mattered. Walking to my car that night, I saw Vin leaning against the door like he'd been waiting for me. "You did good," he said. "We did good," I corrected him. He chuckled. "Fair enough." I looked up at the sky, feeling a peace I hadn't felt in years. "Ven," I said softly, "you changed my life." He shook his head. "No, Miss Loretta, you changed yours. I just stood beside you." And in that moment, the truth settled deep in my chest. Sometimes God don't send you a miracle. He sends you a witness to finally see your own power. And once you see it, ain't nobody talking it from you again. Sometimes life takes turns we never expect. Every person in this story carried their own pain, their own choices, and their own consequences. Maybe you saw yourself in one of them, or maybe it reminded you of someone you once knew. What do you think happened next? What would you have done if you were in their place? If you have any questions about what happened to the other characters, or if you want me to share more about them, just comment below. I read every message you leave, and your thoughts truly mean a lot to me. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you think differently, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep sharing stories that move people, open minds, and remind us we're all human. At the end of the day, your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for being part of this journey. More powerful stories are coming soon. Stay tuned and stay kind.